When did you take the step to actually writing your own music? Was it a...
It was, it depends how you look at it, because, it was 2 or 3 years later that that was all I was doing, writing my own music. But coming up with my own stuff was something that I wanted to be able to do kind of from day one.
Why?
Sorry?
Why?
Because it was mine. Like, I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it was just that little bit more interesting than here's something that's someone else's, and look how well I can copy them. Yeah. That wasn't as cool to me as listen to this thing that you haven't heard it before because I just came up with it last night. It was quite a kind of ego thing in a way, but it's just great. That was the cool thing. That's something that attracted me to playing the guitar. And all these guys had just come up with this stuff. So I loved the kind of attitude that came with it. Yeah.
So actually you were, but then you wrote your own stuff. But when were you actually getting more and more satisfied with what you wrote yourself?
Later on, like maybe I was 16. Yeah, I was about 15 or 16 when I first, we started a band. Me and some close friends and my brother, who's also musical. We started bands. And that's one of the times that you kind of really go, okay, maybe this is all right, maybe this is an okay song, is when you've got everybody around you and the drummer goes 1, 2, 3, 4, clicks it in. And when you can play together, there's such a big sound there. It just, that gives you the added confidence that maybe we're all right,
Yeah.
Which is, you're probably not, we're probably terrible, but you just, you get that added confidence. So yeah, and personally, it was later that I started to think about doing things on my own. And
why?
I guess I realised, after being a huge fan of like the Stones and Aerosmith and all these bands and the Beatles, Kings of Leon, I realised that there was something at that time, and I guess still now, there was something to me that was just a little bit cooler about the kind of one man and his guitar, or one person and their guitar, It just, and from storyteller to sort of, kind of guitar player,
yeah.
I liked both of those things. So from like, Bob Dylan to Stevie Ray Vaughan, or like, more recently, John Mayer, Ray LaMontagne, people like Ben Howard, who can really play, but he's got some stories and he's got some great songs. That was just a little bit more. I realised that was one of the reasons why I started to play. Before I thought about being in bands, when I was 11 years old, I liked that idea of it all comes from here. I don't need guys around me necessarily because I can make this one sound. And then it used to just flip back on itself like that. Like I go from one thing to the other because once I really sort of felt like I got the hang of writing and started to think about maybe I'm going to like be me and do this on my own. Then I started to write with other instruments in mind, that I'd sort of hope to employ later on. But yeah, I think I just kind of went. Bands are great, but I think it needs to be a bit more personal.
And you said the stories to tell. What sort of stories do you mean? Stories?
Life
Personal
stories.
Life stories. Yeah.
Life stories. Personal life stories. Both. Personal stories about someone's own life. So I was writing songs about my own life that were personal stories. But, the kind of one of the magic things about great writing that I'm always trying to kind of achieve is, that perfect balance between writing something that might be deeply personal, but loads of people on a universal level can relate to.
What is, in your opinion, the best song that you wrote that achieved this? That was personal, but also.
Yeah, those are the keepers.
Can you name me one for yourself?
I mean, there's and this is not to say that there's one that I prefer more than loads of others, but like, there's a song of mine called Scars that I'm really proud of. I'm really proud of that song because it's a deeply personal song. It's about something that really affected me emotionally, and I play it live. And the things that people, come up and say to me afterwards about that song and how it affects them, and how they can relate to it, about a situation in their life. That's kind of the greatest like, achievement.
Can you share one story that someone said to you?
Well, I guess so. Scars is, it's kind of, it's about. It's all, it sort of talks about the idea of a long distance relationship, and with that comes the possibility that, when you sort of part to different sides of the world or wherever, or different sides of the country, one might not come back to the other, or it might just fall apart. And there was a girl that came up to me, after a set recently, and she said, that I really loved that song. It really sort of kind of got to me, and she said, the tough thing for me is, she said, I'm like the girl that didn't go back. She said, and I've heard that song tonight, and she said, and now I'm thinking about it. So that was kind of there was a little bit of a moment there for her, where, and I guess for me as well, where I'm like, wow, songs can, even songs that I've written. That's the surprising thing, is that even songs that I've written can really kind of matter to people. It's kind of a cool feeling, right?
Yeah. I think is that your goal?
I'm not. There's always a few goals. I'm not really sure, because I write songs because I have something to say. I'll have something that I got to get off my chest. On the other hand, I'm also writing songs because I just like the sort of notion of songwriting. I think it's interesting, and so I'm just trying to create as an artist.
What makes it interesting, trying to write a song?
The ways in which it can make you feel. That's the fascinating thing about music. You don't know how, but it touches you and it affects you. It's not a tactile thing that you can hold in your hand, but it like washes over you in such a sort of forceful way, and it's just that whole sort of concept is fascinating. So to be in the business of kind of creating that stuff is, it's so addictive,
Well, you've released 3 EPs.
Yes.
And now your album will be released early next year.
Yeah.
When during the recording of the album did you come up with the album title?
Actually, the kind of the words "chaos" and "the calm" came up in a conversation before I even started recording the album. And
can you recall? Can you recall with whom?
I can't recall that. This is the thing. People have asked me recently, and I'm trying to sort of rack my brains as to when it came about. I cannot remember.
But what mindset were you in?
I was thinking about. Well, we were talking about. I guess I was kind of talking about, without meaning to seem, cliche or anything like that. It was a bit of a talk about life. I think the conversation was about life and about where I was at, and I think we were talking about songwriting as well, and what it means to really write a great song, and what it takes, and what the components that it needs, the ingredients that it needs, and I guess so I'm kind of guessing it all stemmed out of what the album is about to me as well, and therefore why those words resonated to me and I ended up feeling like they needed to be the album title, and that's that. Chaos and the calm is found in everyday madness and in every day. Every day is made up of those things, and that very much kind of represented the last couple of years of my life. Like mentally, so internally, like, trying to write and trying to, and relationships and the idea that, when I was 19 and when I was 21, I needed to get out of the places I was in and move to another place. And there's a lot of chaos and calm involved in these things. So yeah, it all kind of fell into place when I sort of attached that to what all of the songs on the album, are kind of about.
What mindset are you in now? Chaos or calm?
Well, the thing is, if I say chaos, then my point is that it'll get calm eventually, and then it'll come round to that. It's a perpetual thing.
That's good. And last question.
Sure.
BBC sound off.
Yeah, man.
Is it important?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's big recognition. That's big recognition. It's very important to me. It's just cool that, like I say, that people, this list is compiled every year, and being in music in the way I am, it's important because it's kind of rewarding to know that people want to include me in the stuff in the music and the artists that they think will be really successful in the coming year. That's a big compliment.
So no extra pressure?
The thing about that is there is pressure, but I like that. I kind of like it. It feels, it's like, okay, there's a challenge here. There's a challenge to rise to. Great, let's have a go. Because I'll only get one shot to give it everything that I can. So I'm in. Like, let's do this.
So maybe next year, one year from now, you have the best-selling album in the US and the UK, just like Sam Smith has.
That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. I'm working for that. That's all I'm working towards. That's one of the main reasons why I do it. So yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Cheers.